Hello everyone, it's Christine and I'm back for another episode of our Stitch Along where we're creating a fabric dictionary of stitches. So we're still on blanket stitch and learning lots of fabulous variations of it. And for this episode we're going to be doing 2 stitches because one of them is particularly easy, and so I thought it would make sense to get 2 of them captured in this episode. So the one that we'll finish with is the whipped stitch, which is very straightforward, and we'll start up with German knotted stitch. So both of these were suggested by the lovely Tess, one of our subscribers and participants in this stitch along. So what I've done is just drawn myself a line above where my honeycomb stitches were. I'm going to be using that line of honeycomb stitches as a guide, both on the horizontal, but I'm also going to be using these little down strokes as a guide as well. So if you've got space, you might want to consider doing that, but otherwise you'll at least want to draw a line up the top, and you may even want to draw yourself some little grid lines essentially down at even intervals. See, you can decide whether that's something you need when you sort of, watch how it comes along. So I'm using some punch needle thread in this yellow colour, my banana colour. So I'm going to pop out from the back. I'm just popping out just for my own sort of symmetry reasons, immediately above where the honeycomb stitch was. And then I'm just going to do a regular buttonhole stitch a little bit to the side of where that down part of the honeycomb was. So I'm not capturing the honeycomb threads at all. I'm just using that lower line as a bit of a guide for where I stitch. So I'm doing the regular regular blanket stitch there. And then I'm going to do one close together on the other side of the down line. So again, using that down line as a guide. So I hope you're all having a great day or a great evening. So those are closer together, and now what I'm going to do is pass my needle under both bits of thread. We're going to pull. It does take quite a bit of thread, this stitch. I was doing a little practice run before, and yeah, it's quite a thread hungry stitch because you're doing a fair bit of whipping around. So we've created this little knot at the top, and it's got 2 little, like an upside down V, or like 2 little legs. So now I'm going to move along again using my honeycomb as a guide, and I'm going to put in a blanket stitch to this side of the downward bit. So it's just the regular blanket stitch, except you're putting 2 of them relatively close together at even intervals. And that's why having the guide there is particularly helpful. So I've got my 2 stitches together, and now I'm going to put my needle under, but not skewer the fabric and not skewer the thread. I'm just passing the thread under so we get that nice little notch. So moving along to the next point, I'm going to do my 2 blanket stitches close together. Okay. So I believe the Tour de France is starting, well, tonight, which I'm filming this on a Saturday night. So Tour de France is starting up. I enjoy watching it, particularly for the scenery. I do like the sportsmanship as well, but I love watching it for the scenery, particularly when it's in France, but also when it goes other places as well. It's really interesting. But given I haven't been doing my usual overseas travels in recent years, it will be lovely to be maybe seeing some places we've been before. And I just love how, everyone gets so behind it. We were really fortunate on one of our travels in France. We were able to, join a leg of it and watch them come whizzing by. But the really lovely thing about it was just how much of a community event it was. We were able to join a small sort of mountain area, and the local firefighters were out there. People had sort of, food stands and barbecues going, and all the locals were all catching up with each other. It was, really, really beautiful community atmosphere. And it's so funny because you wait around, and that's why everyone has their food and drinks and things like that. And then when the riders actually come by they come by and they're gone in just, the merest of time. But it's good to make it a whole day activity. It was really hot weather when we were over there. And we were just at the sort of the base of them, going then up a very big mountain where people have to sort of go up there ahead of the race, and then they can't leave until a while after the race has gone through. So we got to an area where we could still drive into, park our car, and were able to leave after the race rather than waiting till the roads had all been cleared. But we watched they have the helicopters monitoring the race, and we watched them sort of, wending their way as the cyclists went up the mountain. The sort of, helicopters were doing the same above them. So you could kind of tell where the cyclists were, even though we were down below. But the way they can ascend those mountains, it's incredible. So I don't watch that much sport on TV, but the tour is an exception. In fact, I actually can't think of other sport that I watch on TV. When the Olympics are on, I'll capture that. I catch that. But I'd much rather watch stitching videos than most other sports. Now my thread's getting a little bit sort of twisty, so I do my usual trick of just hanging it upside down, letting it twist around. So we're just continuing along, doing exactly the same, creating our 2 blanket stitches close to each other on either side of our little sort of marking down line, and then passing our needle after that under them to create that knot. So just finishing the second of my blanket stitches, and then passing the needle back underneath, making sure not to catch them, and then pulling up towards the top to make sure the knot ends up at that top area. And then I don't want to skewer my stitches below either. Always making sure with your blanket stitch that the thread is behind the needle, so you get that knot. Doing the second stitch on the other side. Just trying not to capture your clamp on the side of your stitching ring. It's always a challenge to think where to put it when you're doing 2 stitches in 2 different parts of your embroidery hoop. And the final stitch, let's make sure I'm not stitching my fabric underneath. And one on this side. And then do my little knot, and then I'll take the final stitch out to the same distance as the other stitch and take my thread through to the back. So that's the German knotted. I'll just tie it off at the back and then give you a look at it. So that's the stitching it does at the back, which is just a whole series of up and down stitches. Isn't that fascinating? And then on the front, that's where that's where the magic happens on the front. Very utilitarian back and interesting detail on the front. Okay, so that is our German knotted blanket stitch. They do look like little people holding hands. They really do. Almost want to put maybe little heads on them, little French knot heads. A little community. So that's that one, and then we will do some whipped stitch along our existing row of blanket stitch. So I think I'll use the same colours I've used, but in alternating. So I'll use the blue over my more sort of tan coloured ones. And so I'll pop up from the end where I started, and then I'm just going to take my needle down, and again you might want to use a tapestry needle. Take my needle down underneath, and every time you're going to go, so I've done one stitch underneath there, and then again I'm going to come from the top to the bottom just under the stitch, and you always want to be going in the same direction. So under each of these I guess loops, you're just going up from the top and down, so you get this candy cane striped effect. So you're basically within any of these little across the top bits, each of those is getting one pass of the needle coming from the top and then down through it. And you get that lovely stripy. So it's nice to use contrasting thread. You can use the same colour thread if you just want to end up with a thicker appearance to your stitch. But I think the contrasting just looks so lovely. So just remember, you can go down and then up, but just as long as you do the same direction the whole way. I just prefer to go down through the stitch. And then once you get to the end, you can just take your needle back to the back. So that's that twisted stitch there. Or sorry, whipped stitch. Looks like a twisted stitch. So I'm just going to tie my blue off. And then we'll thread our nice vintage tan one, which I've got here. So it's lovely how you can kind of keep adding to your stitches. Like this one, we started with a single row of blanket, and then we added the second row interlocking with it. Now we're adding the whipped stitches to it. So I'll pop up, I think, at this end this time. So that's where I started that row. And then this time again, but I'm going sort of, I'll go down through it this way. I might just move it this direction to make it easier for myself. Oops, and I've just unthreaded my needle. When I say easier for myself, suddenly I make it harder for myself. At least this thread is very easy to thread. So again, we're just going in this whatever direction you pick to go. You just keep doing that under each of your anchoring, sort of across the bar stitches. So never skewering the fabric and not skewering the thread. You're just passing your thread under the base, the sort of foundation that's there. And then likewise, when you get to the end, you just take it to the back behind the final stitch. And then anchor that off at the back. Try not to get a knot. Try and work out where your end actually is. Okay. So that is our whipped blanket stitch. So the lovely candy cane effect. So it looks like quite a complicated stitch now, but you've just done it through simple stitches and then just adding to those stitches. That's a lot of fun. So thanks for watching, and tomorrow I think we might do sunwheel stitch, and it's a circular stitch, so I think I might do that in here, and then we're going to do a filling stitch, which I think I'll do over here. So you might want a few more circle shapes. And I think we've got then one other stitch coming up under the blanket stitches, which is the rosette of thorns. So I might end up doing that either end. I'll have a think where I fit that in, or maybe up the top if I can fit that into my book of stitchery. So thanks for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.